That was a blast. All right. Let's welcome. First, I'm going to introduce the brains, the moral compass, and Jimmy McGill's better half. She plays Kim Wexler, Ray Seahorn.
Thank you. Wow, nice introduction. I'm the brains. I like it.
The co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director of Better Call Saul, and the director of tonight's episode, Something Unforgivable, Peter Gould.
Glad to be here.
And the producer and star of Better Call Saul, Jimmy McGill, and Saul Goodman himself, Bob Odenkirk. Welcome.
Hey there.
So, Peter, I'm going to start off with you. My first question is, are you guys shooting? When are we going to see season 6?
Ooh, what a great question. Our fervent hope and desire is to be shooting in early next year. As for when you'll see the show, I mean that's up to the fates and to AMC and Sony.
Have you finished writing all of season 6, or are you still in the middle of it?
No, we are in a Zoom room every day. We got to meet for 2 weeks at the very beginning of the season, and we have been in the Zoom room ever since. And it's it's like trying to dance in quicksand. It's a handicap in my book to be working remotely, but I love what we're coming up with. It's just taking a little longer. We are now breaking. We're pretty late in the season now, so I got to say I'm very excited about where we're going with this.
And let me ask you something. Certain series creators will let their cast know their entire arc. Some of them work that way. They'll let their actors know, hey, here's your arc for the entire season. And some of them are like, you're going to find out episode by episode. How do you do it with your actors?
Well, this is sort of a new situation because usually we're still breaking the episodes as we're shooting, and we're going to have more of them done this time. We're feeling our way through it. It's like every other aspect of the COVID world. I mean, the truth is, though, that I think I can't speak for these guys, but with each script, you're working through it moment by moment, and it's in some ways it's better not to know everything that's going to happen because you obviously never want to play the moments that haven't happened yet, but which is something we all have to keep in mind when we're on the set and editing and writing. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it all works out. We're going to have, I think, a few more scripts than we usually do, but I'm Mr. Second, third, and fourth guest, so it still takes a little while to get them done.
Well, let's talk about some of the stuff we saw. So, Kim and Jimmy. Kim is egging Jimmy on more in a way that we haven't really seen her. She's really pushing. I introduced you to the moral compass, and you're really pushing that, Ray. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that. And, Bob, what do you think Jimmy's response is to this?
Yeah, she is definitely pushing him. And something that one of the many layers that I found so brilliant in this finale script that Peter co-wrote with Ariel Levine. And this was her first produced script, and we were very excited for her. And one of the many things that I loved was, and they do this so well in the series constantly, that there are other internal and external things going on with Kim, some of which mostly the audience is just privy to, that she's taking into that moment when you see her start to egg him on and go to a very dark place. And I had a really good time working with Peter and with Bob on this scene so that you did see these different layers and some little peaks of like just how menacing it is versus a game of one-upsmanship versus a suppressed history of their relationship. He brought Saul Goodman into our relationship and I didn't get a vote on it. And so she's bringing this other person in as well. There was a lot of there was relationship elements. You almost thought they might break up, and it's very clear that Kim doesn't want that. You've also seen her see all of these public defender files and get angry at Patrick Fabian playing Hamlin. And so there's this seething self-righteous martyrdom that she has going on that can also crush a person if it goes too far. So there's a lot going on there, which I loved. But do you see a very, very dark side of her there? Yes, you do.
And Bob, what does Jimmy make of it?
He's like the viewers watching the show. He has no idea. he's a bit mystified. Up till that very last moment of season 5, what you just saw, there's just I think my point of view on it, a general sense that Jimmy is the loose screw in every way, coming up with capricious ideas and plans and kind of morally slippery, and they slide around to whatever suits him in the moment. And then in that last moment, even though Kim has participated in some of his cons, his creations, we've seen her do sketchy things. And then at that last moment where is she teasing him? Is she pushing him? Is she ahead of him down some dark path? She's a more complex, maybe more subtly drawn and also complex person and character than Jimmy, who we got to know pretty quickly. And, a few new dimensions were brought in the first 2 seasons of this show to what you knew from Breaking Bad, some pretty large dimensions that we hadn't been privy to. But once you got his workings down, somewhere around the end of season 2, I think you kind of knew his little hamster wheel and how he rode it and how he walked it. And now we see that Kim is more, there's just a lot more going on there. And I don't really know, I don't know what drives her. I don't know what she's after. I know that she was trying to play by the rules and seemed to be a very driven and controlled person who is able to control herself. But now I'm not so sure what she's after, or even her ability to maintain her own trajectory, which I thought she had complete control over, but now I'm not so sure. It's pretty intriguing.
So Ray, you do this gesture to Jimmy toward the end of the episode where you just do kind of finger guns. And while it may seem innocent, it's very foreboding. Can you tell me about how you translated that, from how you brought that to life from script to and just your whole think process on that?
Sure. I can also make a terrible confession, which is it wasn't until pretty late in my studying that script that I realized, oh, Jimmy does that to me when he does It's All Good, Man, at the end of the other script, which actually turned out to be, although dense, a little gift for me, because it allowed me to think of a lot of other things before I thought about imagery and like, oh, this is going to bookend and it has to mimic him. And isn't that funny? You could put them right next to each other. So I was kind of glad that I didn't start with thinking of it as an image I'm creating instead of deciding what my intentions are behind. And then it was another moment. That entire series of scenes in the hotel was just so much fun to work with Peter on, because it was really important it's fun that the audience doesn't get it nailed in, like it's not spoon-fed to them exactly what she's doing or thinking, including in that gesture. But Kim also doesn't want to be overly clear to Jimmy. So I was able to play it as Kim's intentions of, I don't think she wants him to ever be off his guard And so we were able to use that for Kim's intentions to make that, even that gesture, it's a bit odd. It's slightly aware of mimicry. It's also slightly menacing. It's also slightly funny, like, just kidding. No, I'm not. Ha, that's super weird. Bye. So we had a lot of fun with it. We did a lot of takes. It's a surprisingly complex gesture to do to your partner, or maybe not surprisingly complex.
Now, ever since you got in the car accident, it's been like a huge foreshadowing. We've been worried about Kim. Are you worried about her fate as well? Do you share that sentiment with the rest of us?
I do. I always have. First of all, if you get a chance to play in the sandbox that is Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan and all of our writers writing, you really don't want to be forced to get out. So you're always concerned that you might have to leave. But then I used to wonder a lot more about her physical fate, and now I wonder a lot more about her moral fate, which I think is more interesting for me to ponder and think about. But I really like what they've done as far as how, as Bob was saying, how complex she is, and never telling you too much, because I've enjoyed so much the relationship that the audience has to the Kim Wexler character, and that they are often her closest confidant. Jimmy is her closest confidant in the scenes, and the only person that she lets her guard down around, really. She's quite the private person. But there are a lot of moments all the time where she's very poker faced about things, but the audience is privately aware of her thoughts. And I've really liked that relationship, and I think it added a lot to her complexity, that they would let me play these silent moments and let the audience stay on that tether with me, which is, it's a lot for the audience to take in, but they really went along for the ride, and I had so much fun doing that.
Bob, you are, I've said this several times, it's amazing to watch you work. You wear this guy, you wear all facets of him. You wear him heavy, you wear him funny. Tell me about playing all these sides of Jimmy and Saul, from living in the shadow of his brother, to the huckster that's signing clients in the tent, to the guy that's talking sense, to Kim toward the end of today's episode. How do you prepare for this? How do you jump from one side to the other?
Yeah, well, look, I have, it's the greatest gift anyone could ever hope to have who likes to perform and acts at all. I mean, I imagine I'm the envy of every actor for having this part, because I do get to do almost pure comedy, sometimes for 2 or 3 pages, if you count, being in that, tent giving away my phones with my phone number to a bunch of crazy characters. And then I get to do some pretty heavy, very deeply personal revelation drama that is utterly earnest and soul searching. And these things can be in a script, 2 pages from each other, these varieties of performance and presence, really. They all make sense to me. And I do think it's true of people. I mean, I think the character, while it's incredibly rich and the dynamic range is insane, I always felt like the truth is that people, we always see whatever, our friends or our coworkers or even our partners, usually we see them in one light. And then, we're seeing Jimmy at work, we're seeing him with people who work for him, we're seeing him with his partner, we saw him for a while with a family member. And you're just a different person with all these people. If you think about the difference between going home for a holiday and sitting around with your family and who you are there in that room versus if you're out with friends, versus if you're any kind of performer on stage, especially a comedy person, these are really wildly different versions of a single person. And I think that it's organic to a human being that there's this variety, and yet not many characters are written to show all those different sides. It's a pretty amazing thing. I think we were very lucky. I don't know if Peter and Vince feel like we pretty much got lucky with the fact that in Breaking Bad you only saw him at work, and then that allowed us and the writers really to get to describe who he was alone, with a family member, with a partner. And these are all different iterations of a human. And it's a great joy. I mean, for me, I like sketch comedy because you get to jump from idea to idea and tone to tone. You get to shift it. It can be big and broad. It can be a little more subtle, almost real feeling at times. And so I just love that stuff. So the fact that I get to have this wonderful part where I get to shift around from page to page, it's the fucking best. It's the best.
Bob, do you have, and I understand you may not be able to tell us, and that's totally, I get that. Do you have a sense of his fate in the end? I mean, you've got two sides of this show. You've got one side of the show, which is walking directly into Breaking Bad, up to Jesse and Walt, hopefully close. And then there's the aftermath. There's the flash forward after Breaking Bad. I mean, even though you're a guy that walks a tightrope, do you think there's a bad set of cards in Jimmy's final outcome? After the Cinnabon, after hiding out in the Cinnabon?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, I have no awareness of what Peter and the writing crew have thought up for that. And I imagine they've landed on something by now, at least a pretty strong direction. And I think it'll tell us a lot about who Peter Gould is inside his head, and maybe Vince Gilligan too, when we find out what they do with this person and what they think a person with these kinds of experiences is, and this kind of early, formation, who he was as a young person, what that person can become. And obviously you could go many different directions with it and probably justify many different choices. So that's why it will tell us a lot more about Peter and Vince than it will about this person that they're inventing. I don't know what will happen with Gene. I know that Gene, the character after Breaking Bad, who's in the Cinnabon, seems very serious about life. And he almost seems like a guy who has finally, forsaken this shifty, lighthearted. I mean, that's why Saul was fun. He's kind of having a good time, and he's spirited in his cons and his inventions and his, his plots. And so it's fun to watch him. But he's certainly been burned from the experience of Breaking Bad, and probably including the Better Call Saul world experience. But, he's a guy who's not, he's not showing that face in, I guess, years. I don't know how long he's hidden, but I don't know where he comes out. But I do think, I think anything could happen. I mean, it could be anything. And again, we'll just learn about what Peter and Vince think makes a human being tick, and what they think. I mean, if you look at Breaking Bad, the way I look at it, Walter White, time reveals who he is deep down inside. But it definitely reveals the worst angels of his nature, not the better angels. And he claims to have some pride in that. I don't know if that can be true, but sometimes That's what all you have to grab hold of, and you just say, well, I'm proud of it. But possibly maybe some better parts of Jimmy could come to the fore. I don't know. I think he was a good guy when he was younger. I think he had hope, and I think he loved people. He loved his brother, and he wanted the world to love him back, so I don't know.
Peter, can you talk about the whole Nacho, Lalo, Gus dynamic that you left us off with at the end of this episode, and how things might look going forward? And are you going to keep this high octane pace that you set?
Well, boy, there's a lot to deal with. Lalo is the scales have fallen from Lalo's eyes, at least as far as Nacho's concerned. And I'm really worried for most of the characters. I'm worried about, and I gotta say, Tony Dalton and Michael Mando were just a magical combination. They were the other pair in this episode. Those guys both did such a wonderful job. Will it be as kinetic? All I can say is I think we're definitely playing with the cards that we dealt ourselves. We're definitely playing the cards that we dealt ourselves last season. I think it's one of the things that we've been really trying to stick to, being real about what's happened to these characters and where their heads are at. And sometimes that makes it very difficult because we also have this other thing going on, which is there's this other TV show, it's 62 episodes of Breaking Bad, and we want this all to be consistent and knit together. But having said that, I think as long as we've been true to the characters, we've never gone far wrong. And of course, I think Lalo definitely has a lot of things on his minds there in those last few moments of season 5.
Ray and Bob, episode 9, the tail end with Tony Dalton.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me about that. Getting into the mood and the tone of that scene. And Ray, you speak truth to power.
Tom Schnauz wrote and directed that brilliantly on both accords, and he asked Bob and I if we all rehearse a lot on this show whenever possible with your director or with your writer. If not possible because they're on set, then all of the actors are very much into rehearsing and just trying to iron out some of the more coarse things so that we can spend our precious time once we're rolling on finessing subtle nuances. And this was a situation where I was very grateful that Tom carved out actual time with our DP Marshall Adams there and Tony and Bob and I, which was hard because you're often shooting one of the three of us. And so, but getting us all in Kim's condo was really helpful, not to just to discuss the ideas, but to deal with this blocking. And the blocking in that scene is very much a part of the intentions of the character that is not sort of placed upon us. It's this triangle. It's the monster in the house classic setup. And then he's there and this triangle that keeps shifting and who's in power and who's in the middle. And then on top of that, Jonathan Banks is aiming a sniper rifle that Tom specifically wanted it to look like might hit my head at any moment. And, and that's ratcheting up that. So it was a delicate operation. And I'm sure Bob feels the same. We were really grateful to be able to work through it and rehearse it. For me, for that big explosive ending, I went at it and I told Tom this from the beginning. I don't think she planned it, and Kim is a planner. She started piecing together, what am I going to do, a step at a time. You start with, could we run past them? Could we take him? Could I get out of this? Could I jump out that window? Where are the knives? And it's kept getting distilled down to realizing Jimmy is not his best in this moment. She has to do something. I clearly can't physically take this man. I know there was a bullet involved in whatever they're hiding. So she goes to a pragmatic place, which a fierce one, but it is very Kim in heightened, and it's the marriage proposal beautifully came out of that as well in heightened emotions. I think Jimmy deals with his emotions better than Kim. Kim will immediately turn the switch and make it. It's got to be problem solving. There's got to be a practical solution. I will outsmart this. I will outwork this thing, rather than sit in messy emotions. And so I went to Tom and I said, I don't think she intended to say this until she had to. And then I think every sentence, every 2 to 3 sentences, she would have stopped talking if he would leave. She goes further and further until she's actually almost mockingly insulting him because it isn't working yet. At any moment, I think she would have loved to have just been done. Sentence 4, done. And he leaves, but he doesn't. And he's just staring at Jimmy. And so she keeps anteing up until if her bluff got called, it would have been a serious issue. And thank goodness it wasn't. And she's also right in what she's saying. She's right. I don't think she frightens Lalo into leaving. I don't think he's terrified of her. I think he leaves wondering what he could get out of this, who's in his pocket, who isn't, what he could use, what he couldn't use, and possibly thinking about his house getting in order, because he certainly has some issues there.
Bob, before we go today, I got to ask you about episode 8 in preparing for the desert. Did you go all method? Did you walk a half an hour before the shoot, 2 miles, sweat it all out?
I did not have to. Anthony, episode 8 took no. It was just getting to set was method enough. Getting to the set was way far out of town, and it was 50-minute drive into the middle of nowhere, and it was super boiling hot, and it was the way I look and the way I felt. That's how the whole crew felt, and that's how they all looked too. I was the only one on camera, but they all looked exactly like me.
How many days were you out there?
I believe
Roughly.
it was 14.
Oh, wow.
It might have been 12. We were supposed to be there for 7 or 8? It was double. It was double whatever we were supposed to do.
And only
I think the whole episode was 9.
You guys were out there 12. Yeah.
I think it was 18 days, the whole episode. So it was 14 or 12, right?
No, you're right. 14. Because I think you guys came.
You're right. Because it was 2 whole weeks and then 2 days or 3 days. So yeah, it was probably 12 days.
I went out to visit them once, Anthony, and I was dying within 25 minutes. I was like, oh, I got to get out of here.
It was really hot, Anthony, and we were out in the Tahajali reservation land, and it was, beautiful and amazing out there. It's an amazing thing to see and be in. People do live out there, not many people, and they live very, very far apart. So occasionally a truck would drive by, probably 3 times a day. And it's a real special place. We're very lucky to get to shoot there.
Mm-hmm. And wait, I think you made a discovery there too.
Well, the dogs, we brought a dog home that was pregnant. This dog who was out in the middle of nowhere, and she had babies in her, and Ray, and I and Patrick and one of our Teamster drivers, a woman who has been a midwife for a lot of dog births. We all, Jan, yeah, we oversaw
Jan, and then also
dog.
Meg Gergerwich helped tremendously. It was a team. It was a team effort.
It was a team effort, and we took this dog home, and we helped her have her babies and found homes for them. And the Native Americans were, they were totally on board for it. We checked with them multiple times to make sure they didn't mind us borrowing their dog or taking their dog, and they were fine with it. And all those dogs have great homes. I'm sure we'll see some of them when we go back next year.
Peter, before we go, show us the Better Call Saul bobbleheads.
Well, Whoa, we have so many of them here. Of course, Bob and Ray. And they're both saying yes. Are they saying yes or no? I don't know. And then we have, of course, these
Oh my God, these guys are just saying no.
guys.
Look at these guys.
Gus's glasses come on and off. And then, of course, Hector Salamanca.
Nice.
The best. I love it.
Well, thank you all. Peter Gould, Bob Odenkirk, Ray Seahorn from Better Call Saul. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to Deb for doing this.
Thanks.